Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown from the Caregiving Years Training Academy. Thanks so much for being here with me today. This is the third of a series that we're doing around healing our caregiving fatigues. And I had an idea about compassion fatigue as it relates to our caregiving experience just about 5 years ago. One of my certified caregiving consultants during our training was talking about how her mom just didn't seem to be able to cope anymore. And I started thinking about it and I thought, it's not that her mom can't cope, it's that her mom is coped out, which led me to think about compassion fatigue in a different way. Made me think of compassion fatigue as this umbrella term, which reflects all that we get weary of during, for instance, a caregiving experience. So when we're caring for a family member, we get tired of so many things. And I found it helpful if I got specific about what we grow weary of. So we've talked about guilt and worry fatigue in our first two classes. And today we're going to talk about hope fatigue, where it feels like, where did the hope go? So as we go through today's presentation, feel free to post in our chat room. I'm going to ask you some questions and you are welcome to add your answer in the chat room, and I welcome your insights, perspectives, and experiences. Okay, so let's get started. Let me share our screen and then let's talk about hope fatigue. So there's so many opportunities when we're caring for a family member that will take hope from us. And I started thinking about specifically, what are those situations? So I've listed 6, but I want to let you know this is just 6. There's more to this list, but I wanted to focus on 6 today. So we can lose hope to a doctor who comes into an exam room and gives a diagnosis or says, there's nothing more we can do. And it feels like the doctor holds that hope. And then when the doctor leaves the exam room, it's like the hope goes with him. I think we can also lose hope to family members and friends, specifically family members and friends who maybe disappeared or just couldn't step up to help us in a way that we felt like we did for them. And then certainly we lose hope during a disease process. If you're caring for someone with dementia, for instance, you can see the decline sometimes from minute to minute, and it feels like it's so insidious and there's nothing you can do. And so the disease seems to take hope from us. And then when we have a difficult day, when nothing is going right, it feels like there just isn't hope in our day today. And then if we look at yesterday, we can somehow get caught up in the woulda, coulda, shoulda. So we start to really reflect on our regrets in such a way that it feels like we're trying to change the past. And there's only so much we can do that will change the past. It is what it is. Because we feel like we can't change it, we can feel like I've lost hope. And then looking into our future, especially if it's a future where it feels uncertain and unknown, it can feel like our future might not have hope for us. So I'd love for you to share in the chat room, which of those 6 does it feel like you've lost hope to? And I'd also love you to share, what would you add to this list of 6? What else has happened in your experience where you felt like, wow, I lost hope because of this relationship, this experience, or this situation? Okay, so let's get a little specific about hope. So we talked about where it goes. How do we get it back? How do we gain hope? So in that terrible moment where it feels like the doctor has left the room and taken with him or her our hope, because they've told us about a diagnosis or another diagnosis, or have indicated there's nothing more that can be done. We have that moment where it feels like we've lost hope. But the reality is, we only have that moment. And in that moment, we actually can find hope. I think about sitting in a doctor's office and hearing difficult news, especially when I was with my parents when my dad was diagnosed with cancer. I was the note taker. I went with them with the specific responsibility that I gave myself to take notes. I wanted them to feel the news and not worry about having references to go back to around what was the official diagnosis, what does it mean, what's the treatment plan. So when I sat there with my parents in that doctor's office, it occurred to me that our presence also is a way that we stay hopeful because we are not leaving our carees, our family members during a time when they need our presence most. And I think about that during the pandemic when we couldn't be with family members. And that really felt like a huge loss to hope. But in the moments that we have right now, we can create something that's meaningful. And in future moments, we can remember these moments where we were fully present. And even if our fully present moment is because we are there and they are here, so we're not together, but in our heart, we are fully present to what someone is experiencing. That's hope. I believe that energy that we put out when we are fully present to someone during pain is hope. And it's that energy of comfort. And it's also that energy of courage because you've experienced people leaving and not being able to stay because it's hard to stay during someone's pain. And certainly when you hear the news of a diagnosis, that's painful. Certainly at the end of someone's life, that's painful. And it's hard for some to be there. So when you're fully present in that moment, when someone is experiencing pain, you are hope. And the reason that you are hope is because they know they are not going to go through this alone. And I think one of our greatest fears is to be alone during difficult times. So your presence, even if it's just the presence of energy, gives comfort because people know when you are with them, they are not going to be alone. That's hope. That's hope. So here's my question to you. How will you use your moments so they become comforting memories? So if there's someone in your family experiencing something painful right now, how will you be present to them? And being present is about being a listener, being a hand holder, just being there. And I think if we can actually remember how we stayed present, we hold hope. And it's not just us holding hope, it's that person we're present with. They hold hope too because they remember our presence. They remember that we were there. Yes, I love this suggestion in the chat room, which is to listen to their stories about their past. That's very comforting. So at someone's end of life, when fear around legacy might start to crop up, listening to their stories means that their stories continue. And that's a legacy that they can leave. I really feel like somewhere in our society we lost the ability to truly be listeners. There's something about maybe social media where everybody is a talker, everybody is always on stage, where the listeners and sometimes those in the audience are somehow underappreciated. And yet, when you're a listener during someone's painful time, you are creating comforting memories times two. And that is for yourself and for them. Because again, your presence reminds someone that they are not alone. And we don't want to be alone when we're hurting. That's hope, to be someone's presence. It's the gift, right? We think about present as a gift. Our presence is a gift. Okay, so let's look at when family members and friends disappear. So my parents had a really difficult 2015. My dad's cancer spread, so he had surgery to remove his bladder, a kidney, his ureter. He also had unrelated prostate cancer, so he also had his prostate removed. And then he had a series of other situations that occurred after the surgery. And then my mom started an internal bleed that could not be stopped until they actually had a surgery to remove a third of her stomach. And then it was really difficult for my dad to manage at home while my mom was recovering. So the suggestion was, let's move them to a retirement community. Well, I was the one that had to tell my mom that she couldn't return home from the rehab facility and instead would move with my dad into a retirement community. And boy, was she mad. And I get it. I get that she was mad. So I did everything I could to make that move as easy as possible. So they moved into a 2-bedroom retirement community, and I did my best to replicate the rooms in the house that they used into the rooms that they had in the retirement community. So I set up the furniture in the same way. I had my mom's favorite knickknacks displayed. I wanted her to walk into the retirement community, into their apartment, and feel like it felt a little bit like home. Well, my sister, my oldest sister, completely went MIA during this time. She got really mad at us because we did something that she didn't think was right, which actually was what my parents wanted. So she decided she wasn't going to help. It was one of those situations where if we weren't going to do what she said, she just wasn't going to help. So, okay, so we're going through all this really terrible turmoil. Then my sister adds her drama and then says, I am out of here. It was devastating to my mom. But the one thing she did was to have my niece bring a teapot to the new apartment for my mom. And so when we were giving my mom a tour of their new apartment in the retirement community, I had done all this to recreate what home seemed to feel like to her. And she didn't appreciate anything until she saw the teapot, the new teapot on the stove. And she said, oh my gosh, this must be from my older sister. She's so thoughtful. How wonderful is she? This is amazing. So all she could do was talk about this teapot. So my sister-in-law was with me at the time when we were going through the rooms, and she pulled me aside and said, I cannot believe that that is happening. I said, that's just how it is. So that teapot remained with my mom. They stayed in the retirement community for about 6 months. My mom hated it, so we moved her again. They moved across the street to an apartment, and that teapot went with them. About a year and a half later, my mom said to me, I want to go to Costco. I need a new teapot. And I said, but that's the teapot you got from my older sister. She said, I do not care. I hate that teapot. Throw it away. Let's go get a new one. So we went to Costco and she picked out a new teapot and threw out the old one that my sister gave her. So I had to really reflect on what does this whole situation with the teapot mean? Because it felt like this roller coaster. So it seems to me that when others disappear and when others can't necessarily appreciate the ones who stay, like you and I, have to really align with our belief system. So it was most important that I did what I believed was right. I couldn't continue to help if I was waiting for my mom to say, "This is amazing what you've done for us." It wasn't possible for my mom to say that. So I had to stay because I believed the right thing was to stay and help and be there and not take it too personally when it was all about the teapot and not about how I had just gone through a nightmare to create this really hopefully amazing apartment for them. So it's about what we believe about what's right for us to do. Oftentimes people will say to me, "Oh my gosh, you care for your parents because you love them so much." And I will say, "I care for my parents because I love myself," meaning I know what gives myself peace of mind. And my peace of mind is about staying. So, regardless of how hard it is to stay, I do my best to be fully present and to stay. So, I'm curious, what do you believe? And think about what you believe as it relates to your world, your relationships, your day. What is it that you believe that gives you purpose, that allows you to make difficult decisions, that makes it easier when the day feels like it's against you to stay with the day? What do you believe? And in that acknowledgement of what you believe, you find hope. So, for instance, when my sister in law said to me, "Oh my gosh, your mom is going on and on about the teapot given to her by a daughter who did not help, and here you are doing all this, and she hasn't even acknowledged." And I said, "Oh, that's just how it is. It's because of my belief system that I didn't have a meltdown, that I didn't say, 'Mom, this is terrible that you're not acknowledging what I just did. Don't you see?' It's not about what my mom gives to me or doesn't give to me. It's about what I believe. Because I believe I was doing the right things at the right time, I kept hope for myself." So when there's the disease process that seems to take our hope, we can take a moment to find our comfort. And this can be difficult because our attention goes to the pressing need. And the pressing need is the disease process. But if it's always about our carry and the disease process, we get lost. And what gets really lost is our ability to acknowledge our own pain. And if we don't take time to acknowledge our own pain, we can't find our comfort. So when you're with your caree and you see the disease and you see the impact, you hurt for your caree and you hurt for yourself. And it's okay to take a moment to find your own comfort. I read an article over the weekend about two young men who care for actually both their parents. The article really focused on the care they provide to their mom who has ALS. And they are in their early 20s, so they're young men. And they talked about playing basketball together and how they go out into the driveway and just shoot hoops and play a pickup game. That's their comfort. And their day is easier because they acknowledge that they need comfort. And for them, the comfort comes from playing basketball. We need comfort too. We hurt during a caregiving experience. We grieve. We acknowledge and experience losses for two. It's important that we too receive comfort. So I'd love for you to say in the chat room, what gives you comfort? And I love this definition of belief that's in the chat room right now, which is, I believe at the end of the road, we are all judged by how we live during the good and during the bad. Yes, I want to be proud of what I leave behind. I think that's so true. And during our bad moments, we are most courageous. I really believe that. And when we show up brave in our difficult moments, it really does help us to feel better. And so the other comments in the chat room are about ice cream that comforts you, absolutely, and new shoes, absolutely. I love that. I love that. And you know, those are about choices too, right? So there are certain situations in our life where it feels like there is no choice. But sometimes to be able to pick out a new pair of shoes, that gives us hope as well. And Michelle is sharing something in the chat room privately with me, so I'm just going to mention it publicly. And she's just giving a different insight about the teapot. And you're right on, Michelle, which is it was the one thing that my sister did so that my mom saw that she wasn't completely deserted by my older sister. And she felt loved when she saw that teapot. And it was what soothed her, right? What hurt her, helped heal her hurt heart. She was very hurt about what my sister did, right? Absolutely, Michelle. And so this idea that she could see a teapot was a visible form that my sister still cared. And that's what my mom needed to see, was that my sister still cared. Okay, so retail therapy is another big topic in the chat room about what brings us comfort. And I love that. And again, it's about choice, that we have the choice to spend our money in a way that is about what we love and what makes us feel good. And the others who have shared in the chat room are talking about going for a long walk and working in the garden. Absolutely. Watching the birds and relaxing on the deck to enjoy nature. There is so much research around how important nature is to our well-being, that being outside is really important for our emotional good health. So last summer, our community pool was closed because of the pandemic, but it opened this summer. So I've been swimming in the morning at 7. And that quietness in the morning is very healing. And then the laps are healing. And that provides comfort to me. And I also will say this idea that I've got it out of the way, like I exercised first thing, brings me comfort too. So there's not this question of when am I going to do it? Because it's already done. Thanks everybody for sharing in the chat room. It's always so great to read your insights and comments. Okay, so let's think about our day. And sometimes we have days where we think, I can't believe everything that's going wrong. And because we can't see anything going right, it feels like that's our life, right? It's completely derailed. We're not going to be able to get on the right path. It feels like our day is our life. It's not going well, and we don't see that it ever will. So when the day feels hopeless, we can do something for ourselves, because that's how we reconnect to hope. So I'm curious for you guys, what's a hopeless day like for you? Meaning, what happens during a day when you think, oh man, I'm losing hope here. I'm seeing it slip away. So Jenny is sharing in the chat room that it's when it's not productive. Absolutely. And another comment is when I want to stay in bed all day, right? I think sometimes in our day, the world feels too much for us. And so we want to just escape from the world because it doesn't feel like the world is a friendly place to us. And it's just because the day is going so off the rails that it feels like there's nothing in our day for us as well. And I think it's okay to say, this day is winning. I have lost my hope to it. The reality, though, is we can still give to ourselves. So we can give to ourselves by acknowledging our pain, not pretending, by giving voice to what we're weary of, which is really what the compassion fatigues do. They allow us to say, I am tired of coping, which is why the day feels so difficult for me. We can give ourselves something that feels like energy. Oftentimes, when the day feels too much, we have lost energy to make it through the day. So it's this idea of, I'm going to stay in bed because I don't have the energy to make it through the day, to face what it is that I know is out there that needs my attention, that requires a decision, that needs me to resolve. So, what gives you energy? Please feel free to share in the chat room. I'd love for you to tell us, what is it that energizes you? In our certified caregiving consultant training, one of our participants just recently said, I hate to say this, but what energizes me is 20 minutes laying on my bed. And I get that, right? Sometimes we can't stay in bed all day, but if we can just retreat to our room and close the door, close our eyes, and just rest on our bed, that can give us energy. Because when the day seems too much, what's really happened is we've lost our energy. And because we don't have the energy for the day, we feel like we've lost hope. But really, the hope is in the energy. So there's another comment in the chat room around riding our bikes, right? I love that. The me time to ride a bike. And there's this really helpful energy around riding a bike, right? Because you kind of get into that repetitive motion of pedaling and the wheel is rolling, and that can be calming as well. And I also think there's something about being able to ride a bike, to be able to move yourself on a bike, that is empowering, right? So there's something faster about it than walking, and you feel like you can get somewhere that you need to go, and that gives you hope. So, this idea of deep breathing is helpful too. We know that when we're really stressed out, our breathing gets shallow, and that the deep breaths helps reconnect us to our energy. Right? So, you can almost feel the difference between taking a breath in and releasing it. In one of our earlier healing fatigues webinars, we did a deep breathing exercise where we focused on breathing in what we want and breathing out what we don't. So we breathed in relaxation and then breathed out stress. We continue to do that. You can do something like that as well, thinking about what do you want? So maybe it's energy, right? So you breathe in energy and you breathe out weariness. You could breathe in hope and breathe out worry. It's a really helpful way for you to focus in on what you want and then release what is not helpful. And I love that others are sharing in the chat room that their faith is something that gives them energy. So prayer and listening to Christian praise music can really energize you as well. Just how we were talking earlier that our presence gives hope, I think the presence of faith reminds us that we are not alone in this world, that there is something bigger, greater than us, that really wants us to be well, that can be energizing. So sometimes we feel like the world is against us, but our faith reminds us that the universe is with us, and that can be really helpful. And so Michelle is also sharing that she has a devotional and she calls it her 2 minutes of peace. And she does it regardless of what's happening. And it's this habit of energy that continues to energize us as well. So thinking about what are the times during the day where you can connect to faith or breathing or a bike ride that energize you. And I love how you guys have been sharing really amazing movements around energy, because sometimes what I think about when I when I feel like I'm losing energy, I think I need to eat. And oftentimes what I need to do is move, because that action will give you energy. And sometimes it's just moving to relax. Something else that I think happens during a caregiving experience is that we don't really give ourselves that time to truly relax, that time to release the worries, to let them know we're going to take care of them later. But in these next 5 minutes, we're going to fully relax. When we think about wellness, oftentimes we don't necessarily include relaxing. We think about working out and eating right, but there is something powerful about being able to relax. And in our busy life, we kind of think, oh my gosh, I can't sit. There's so much to do. But often we are better at doing when we really learn how to relax, even for 10 minutes throughout the day. Just really relax. And when you talk about your prayer and your faith, that's what helps you really relax. Okay, so yesterday is a hard day because we can't go back and relive it, except we relive everything that we did wrong in our mind. So the challenge with yesterday is we remember it, but we don't want it to steal our today. But our memories from yesterday of what we did wrong, of what we said wrong, of what we didn't do right is really what takes away our today. And what we can do is simply forgive ourselves. Now, of course, I said simply, but that's hard to do, right? Because we like things to be perfect. And so it's hard for us to live with imperfection. This idea of forgiving ourselves can be helpful, forgiving ourselves for being imperfect. But I also think if we really feel terrible about something that happened yesterday or 10 years ago, we can actually apologize. And if we can't apologize to the person because they're no longer with us for whatever reason, we can write a note. We can take a few moments and put that apology out into the universe and say, I am so sorry for what happened. I am wiser now and I see the error of my ways. Putting that energy out of the apology, if you can't apologize to that person, can be helpful. It's a way for us to feel like, okay, I get it. I get what went wrong, and now I have a chance to be better. So I'm going to offer an apology, forgive myself, and then take that lesson learned and apply it to today. I think that's the most powerful part about forgiveness is that it gives us the wisdom to change today. So if we regret something that happened 2 weeks ago, we can think about what can I do today so I don't have more regret? What can I do today so I have a feeling of really learning from my mistakes, of being better than I was 2 weeks ago? So it's looking at yesterday not as a reminder of our imperfections, but as an inspiration for how we can be better. Then we don't beat ourselves up for our mistakes, but we look at those mistakes as an opportunity to be better in our relationships, in our work, in our conversations, in our belief system. There's an opportunity in our regrets because it's about being better. So, what or who will you forgive? And it could be something that you forgive yourself for, something you forgive another for. What's the regret that seems to just hang over you that you think, oh, I gotta let this go? It's very difficult to remain hopeful when you remain regretful. So, taking care of the regrets helps you reconnect to hope. Something that I've really worked on with my older sister is this idea of forgiveness. And when my mom talks about my older sister and her heartache, I reframe it in a situation like this. I'll remind my mom that my older sister is not well, because if she were well, she would make different decisions. I'm not sure exactly what's wrong with my older sister because it's not my place to diagnose. I'm not a clinician, but I really believe if she were emotionally well, she would make different decisions. And so I'll say that to my mom, I'll explain that to my mom, and then I'll say, I guess what we can really do is just pray for her well being. And in that, we take action, and that helps us both feel better. So I think, okay, I'm not going to regret or resent her, I'm going to pray for her. Because I truly believe if she were well, she would make different decisions. And there's something that has caused a behavior that is directly related to her lack of well being. And that also takes that feeling personal out of it for my mom. It's not about my mom and what my mom did, it's just that my sister is not well. And that takes a little bit of the hurt out for my mom. So I think about forgiveness as it relates to my sister and then forgiveness of myself, right? So I've been impatient. I have been lacking and I just want to be better. I don't want to stay in judgment of myself. I just want to be better. Okay, so the future sometimes can be really scary. We're not sure how situations are going to play out. May not be sure of resolutions. And I think oftentimes we're not sure if there's going to be enough in the future. And during caregiving, it could be maybe enough money, enough care, enough energy, enough resources, enough days. And depending on your caregiving situation, you may worry that your caree doesn't have enough in terms of time left. Or it could be that you think about your situation as being you don't have enough time left for your caree. This feeling of enough is really hard during caregiving because we worry so much about if we've done enough. So that connects us to our past where we start to really reflect on, oh, I should have done more. If I had done more, the situation would have changed. If I had said more, there would have been less hurt feelings. If I had been more available, I could have prevented this chaos, this crisis. So we look to our past around enough, but then we look to our future and worry about enough as well. And if we think that there's not enough, it's really difficult to feel hopeful about moving into our tomorrow. And that's hard. So when I think about looking into our future and worrying that there's not enough, what I can do right now is to give myself time for enough. So if I worry that there's not enough time for myself and my caree, my focus then is right now, I give myself time with my caree. And if I worry that there's not enough time or enough good health for myself, for instance, I start to worry about what is my future going to be like? What kind of care will I need? I can give myself time right now for my good health. So there's no guarantee around our future. The only thing that we can control is right now. So let's give ourselves time right now. So I wonder, how will you take time? So as you think about the rest of your day, what will you give yourself time for? You might give yourself time to journal, to write out some memories so that you take those memories with you into the future. You might take time this afternoon or tonight to have conversations with family members so that you take the meaning of those conversations into your future. You might take time to make a call that you've just been dreading, and it could be a call around life insurance or to the financial planner, so that you take time today so that you have plans in place for tomorrow. We have this time right now. How will you use it so that in the future, the time you used right now is time well spent? How will you take time today, tonight, so that it's time well spent? Let's think about hope as it relates to what we can control around hope. So I've come up with some statements around hope that I hope will be helpful definitions for you. So we keep hope when we decide what's right for us. What's right for you? And when you embrace that, you keep hope. We keep hope when we use our moments for comfort and forgiveness and another chance. And what we've been talking about in many ways today is this opportunity to give ourselves another chance. What's interesting is we never run out of another chance, but we decide to keep another chance from us. We can give ourselves as many chances as we need. So if something didn't work out the first time, we can give ourselves another chance. If we start a conversation and it just does not go right, and if we say things that we think, I didn't mean it to sound like that, we can give ourselves another chance. And it simply is just saying, that didn't come out the way I meant it. Let me start over. So think about giving yourself another chance and remembering that there's always another chance. We don't run out of chances. We can give ourselves another chance every moment, anytime we need it. Ultimately, I think our caregiving experience is around values and priorities. And if we understand what we value, then we can have an easier time with our priorities, which then means that our choices and decisions have an easier time to line up. So if you value relationship, for instance, then your priorities around relationship, and then you choose time based on the value of relationships, and then you make decisions because of the value you hold in relationships. If you value your own good health, then your good health remains a priority. Something that I have found really helpful is to actually say out loud to people in my life what my priority is. So for my parents, they know that swimming for me is a priority. And regardless of what crisis we're in or what terrible situation has come up, they will say to me, "Did you go swimming today?" Then if I say I haven't had a chance yet, they'll say, "Go now." Because I've expressed that swimming, which is my good health, is a priority. So what you value guides your priorities, and then communicate them to people so that they can respect them as well. If you have a value and a priority, but you disrespect it by saying, "It does not matter," if you discount it by saying, "Oh, it's not that important," others will follow your lead, which is why it's so important that you respect your values and priorities and continue to hold them. So Lisa is sharing in the chat room that she likes to take pictures of day-to-day life, celebrations, events, and then preserve the memories in a scrapbook. That is so beautiful. I love how a picture can take you back to the moment. This is what I do with some of my me time. I love that. I hosted and managed an online community for family caregivers for many years. And we did something on the first day of every month, and we called it our first photo project. And it was a prompt to take a photo of our caregiving day. And it became this still life documentary of our caregiving experience. It was really helpful. I am not someone who will think of taking pictures. So that's beautiful, Lisa, that you just automatically think of that. It's not something that comes automatic to me, which is why I needed to do that first photo project, because it prompted me to take a photo. I've got to go back to that. It prompts me to take a photo. But we can think about, how do we document our life, right? Words, photos, garden. Our garden is a reflection of our life. What we create, what we paint, what we carve, what we cook, what we bake, all of these become representations of our life, right? It's our values and our priorities alive. And it's important that we actually spend time with them, because that's our life. It's important that regardless of what's going wrong in our life or in our day, that we still connect to comfort, joy, and pride. And I think it's important that we have activities in our life that bring us pride. It could be the scrapbooks that you create, Lisa, for instance. That's something to be very proud of. It could be our commitment to service. That's something that we can take pride in. And it could be that we really showed up during those difficult moments brave. That's something for us to take pride in. If we lose our connection to what gives us comfort and joy and what we can be proud of, then we really lose hope. We have to stay connected to those aspects of our life, and they are there for us. They appear throughout our day. And if we discount them, they start to go away, which is why we want to really embrace them and really give thanks for them when they show up. So it's important that we live the life that's right for us. We choose, we decide. It's not about someone choosing or deciding for us. It's our choice, our decision. our life. Which then goes right into we can let go of how others think about how we live. So for my parents, for instance, they think that my life is really odd because I'm not married and I don't have kids and I work a lot. They think that's just, it's very difficult for them to think about that as a valuable life, because for them, the value is in raising and having children. And I appreciate that. I love kids. I just had a different value in my life that I live. I learned long ago that I was not going to make my parents, I was not going to make myself happy if I let go of what I value and instead decided that my parents' values are the life I want to live. That was not the right life for me. We have to live the life that's right for us, especially during caregiving. It can feel hard because you might encounter people that just say, "What are you doing?" But it's right for you because it's a direct reflection of your values and your priorities. That's a life well lived. That's hope. In essence, we keep hope because we are hope. You are hope. That's the beauty of hope. So the doctor doesn't hold hope and then take it away. We are hope, which is why it remains. And just like we think about our good health, that we give back to it, we have to give back to our hope. And when we give to ourselves, we give hope back to ourselves. That's why it's so important that we focus on moments during our day that are for us, because that's what gives us hope. So I just want to close with one of our wheels that we use in our certified caregiving consultant training, and our CCCs use these in their work with clients. And this is the hope wheel, and it's about what are your hopes? So I would just offer that as you look at these 8 words, pick one word and think about what's the hope for that. So, Lisa, you talked about this when you talked about your scrapbooks. Your hope is in the memories that you are documenting. So, as we start to think about fall and winter, we really go into a season of traditions. So, what are the traditions that really reflect your hope? What's the wisdom you have that gives you hope? How will you use time in a way that gives you hope? So there's 8 words just to get you started, just to inspire, but you might think of another word that speaks to you, that makes you think, you know what? My hope is in my good health, or my exercise, or my journaling, or my writing, whatever it might be. Think of a word and then connect that word to what gives you hope. And then create a habit around that so that when you feel like, oh, this is tough for me right now, you reconnect to hope because you have a habit of hope. So you all talked about it earlier. Prayer, for instance, that's a habit of hope. So swimming for me is a habit of hope. So these words are a way to inspire a habit that keeps you hopeful. Okay, so thank you all so much for being here with me today. Before we close, I want to just put in the chat room. If you are here for CEUs, I want to make sure that you get, actually, I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute. I want to make sure that you get the link. So you click that link and then you'll submit your payment for $15 for the CEU, and then you'll be redirected to the evaluation. You have 3 business days to complete the evaluation. So you want to do both, submit your $15 for the one CEU and then complete the evaluation form. And if anybody has any last minute thoughts that they'd like to share before we close today, I'd love to hear from you. And I just want to mention one other thing, and that is our next healing event is Healing from Coping Fatigue. And that's August 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'll put in the chat room how you can RSVP for that if you'd like to join. So we're going to do this for about a year. So we started in May. So we'll do 12 of these healing fatigues over the next year or so, and you're welcome to join. The event to register is free, and it's just $15 for one CEU. Each of these presentations has been approved for one CEU. You will receive an email in about 15 minutes that does have the link to the CEU information. If you are not here for CEUs, we'd still love to hear what you thought of today's presentation. So there's an evaluation form that you can complete as well. That's separate than the CEU evaluation form. And the email that you'll receive in about 15 minutes will explain that for you. Okay, thank you all so much for being here today. It was good to connect with you. It was good to connect with hope. It's always helpful to have a conversation about hope. And I hope that you now know that you can define hope in the way that works for you, because you are hope. You hold hope, which means that the definition of hope that works for you can change regardless of what's going on in your circumstances. It's just about connecting to what you need in that moment, and that will give you hope, because you deserve to connect to what you need. Okay, thanks everybody so much for being here. Thanks for all your thoughts. Great to connect with all of you, and hopefully see you next month. Take care. Bye-bye.